He didn't open the door so much as let it fall away. Snow had thawed and turned the alleys to slick ribbons. Cold got under cuffs and into teeth. When Sergeant Otto Reinhardt stepped into the stairwell, his boots slid on wet grit. The building on Blumenstrasse swallowed sound. The clink of his handcuffs sounded like it didn't belong to him. A woman peered from the second-floor landing and disappeared. They climbed, following a smell that wasn't coal or boiled cabbage, a sweet note that rose and fell like honey warming on a stove. At the attic, Reinhardt felt the brass knob grind and pushed. The room was warmer than the hall, maybe 45 degrees, while the street hovered near freezing. A coal stove ticked. Windows were painted shut. Tape pinned their edges. Sawdust lay in drifts. Under the skylight, a parade of dolls watched with glass eyes, 30 at least, arranged shoulder to shoulder like children lined up for inspection. Their hair was real. He knew before he touched it. "Police!" he called. The man at the end of the table raised both hands. He looked smaller than he'd seemed from the street. 50, gray at the temples, apron tied twice around his middle. The card on the door read, Carl Müller. He nodded as if he'd been expecting company. "What's that smell?" Patrolman Vogt asked behind him. "Beeswax," Müller said. "And glue." "Human hair?" Reinhardt asked. "Yes," Müller said after a beat. "From brushes, barbers, families who save it when they cut it. I pay." Reinhardt slid a doll from the row. The scalp seam was clean, the knots even. He'd seen keepsake locks saved in Bibles. His mother's still held a loop of his sister's braid. The thing that cooled him wasn't the hair. It was the way each head was weighted to sit upright on dowel spines, and how the carved hands had faint palm lines, as if someone meant them to hold. They served the warrant and began the search. Complaints had piled up: ribbons, a child's winter hat from a grave, little shoes, a wooden cross stripped of its braid by morning. In a tall cupboard, boxes labeled in neat script: eyes, hands, mouths, teeth. In one cotton nest lay 8 tiny dentures, milk teeth set into wax gums like a dentist's kit. Vogt swore. "Commissions," Müller said quickly. "For families." "Memorials." "Memorials are photographs," Reinhardt answered, "not teeth." Under the table, they found bundles in oilcloth, heavy as wet books. The first held hair braided with ribbon, 2 inches wide, 3 feet long, wheat blonde. The second smelled faintly of dirt. A third bundle was a child's dress, cut into strips and rolled like bandage. "Where did you get these?" Reinhardt asked. "Cemeteries," Müller said, wincing at his honesty. "Only the hair. No harm." Reinhardt thought of Sundays by the river burial ground, coffee on headstones, children weaving through iron fences. He pictured a man in a long coat stepping between plots at night, lifting wreaths, cutting loosened strands, taking what the living left to feel near the dead. No harm, he told himself, and felt how the words failed when said aloud. Neighbors said Müller kept to himself. The grocer, exact change. The barber, yes, floor sweepings for wigs. A mother, ribbon missing from her daughter's braid the morning after the funeral. They worked for 2 hours, cataloging every piece. The stove cooled. The room slid toward the hall's damp chill. Reinhardt seated Müller. The man's hands were nicked, wax beneath the nails. No tremor. He blinked often, slow, as if each lid hid a thought he could not voice. "Why the teeth?" Reinhardt asked. "You can tell a life by its teeth," Müller said. "Children's teeth are perfect. They don't lie. They make a pure smile." Vogt muttered, "He's sick." "Who are the dolls for?" Reinhardt pressed. "For no one," Müller said too fast. "And for everyone." Comfort in a face. At the desk, Reinhardt opened a notebook. Names, dates, payments. Many entries ended with har. Some read, braid removed, night, followed by an initial. A winter date matched the mother's complaint. He closed the book and set it with the boxes. The hallway filled while they led Mueller down in cuffs. The widow who'd filed the summons crossed herself. Outside, meltwater ran in the gutter, a boy on a bicycle slowing to stare. At the precinct, they laid it all out. The bundles, the dolls, the quiet inventory. The duty doctor examined the materials and found no tissue, only hair and baby teeth. The prosecutor's office was called. Reinhardt wrote his report with the stove at his back and beeswax clinging to his coat sleeves. He kept to facts, the warrant, the seizure, the suspect's statements. Word traveled before the ink dried. That evening, 3 families arrived with photographs. Each thought they recognized something, this braid, that ribbon, those teeth shaped just so. Reinhardt tried to match photographs to notebook lines and asked them to speak one at a time. He watched grief turn certainty into a kind of gravity. Mueller asked for tea and got it. He named barbers who sold sweepings, the market stall where he bought wax, the customers who'd requested memorial dolls with hair from their own combs. He admitted the cemetery visits. He swore he had never touched a body. He looked at the ceiling when he said it. Reinhardt, who'd heard every kind of lie, couldn't decide whether that look meant shame or a man escaping his own words. Charges were filed for theft from graves and unlawful taking from memorials. There was talk of a psychiatric evaluation, though no one could say for what. The city had not found words for this appetite. Papers called him a ghoul with an attic choir. The morning after the arrest, a photograph ran that made the dolls look like children waiting to sing. Reinhardt returned to seal the room. He pressed wax into keyholes and signed his name across the seals. By the work table, a single doll remained because no one had wanted to touch it. Simple blue dress, rope brown hair. Beneath it, he found a shallow drawer packed with small envelopes, each labeled with a date. He opened one and shook out a lock tied with red thread. On the paper, in faint pencil, "For Ida, 8 years." He replaced it, shut the drawer gently, and understood why the room had felt crowded ever since he first opened the door. In court, the judge's bench glowed in winter sun. Families stared at Mueller with the faces of people who wanted answers the statute book couldn't give. The defense spoke of mourning traditions, hair braided into brooches. The prosecution spoke of violation. No bodies, they said. No blood. The wrong was in the taking and in the making, turning private grief into shelves of faces that belonged to no one. The sentence was months, not years. A fine besides. The court ordered the items destroyed, except what families could prove belonged to them. Reinhardt oversaw the inventory. Some mothers took back a ribbon and held it like a rescued limb. Others looked and turned away, unable to choose. The precinct stove took the rest. The wax burned quick and hot, the hair with a smell that made men swallow hard. When it was done, the room felt larger, as if the faces had been a kind of pressure on the air. That night, Reinhardt hung his coat and stood a while with the lights off. His daughter's hairbrushes lay on the table, a few strands caught in the bristles. He pulled them free and dropped them in the bin. He slept without dreams until just before dawn, when he woke with a picture so clear it felt like memory. A man in an attic, alone with a crowded silence, arranging his work until the room looked like it might answer him back. Thank you for listening to The Lantern's Tale. Subscribe for more true stories, if you dare.